My name's Iain Masson, and I'm here working with the guys at Aphrodite to develop an exciting range of beers for Cyprus. The first beer I'm going to talk about is a pale beer. This beer will have a nice pale golden colour, but will have a well-balanced hop character. To get that pale colour, we're using two malts. Predominantly, we're using a malt that's made from Marasota barley. This will be about 90% of the malt grist and will give us a wonderful background for the hops that we add later. The other malt is a malt called Carogold. Carogold has a lovely caramel aroma and adds both depth of character and that slight caramel hint to the final beer. So once we've got the malt character into the beer, we then need to bring in the hops. For the pale beer, we are adding hops at 3 stages throughout the process. The first hops we add are for bitterness. And the hops I've chosen for this are two well-known English hop varieties, East Kent Goldings and Challenger. They're added right at the beginning of the boil to give us a nice, balanced bitterness. But the aroma of those hops will get boiled off, so we add more hops later on in the boil to give us both hop flavour and a lovely hop aroma. For these late hop additions, I'm still using the East Kent Goldings, but I'm using also a fabulous American hop called Cascade. Brewers can't go into a brewery without having a good sniff of the hops. And to do this, we rub the hops in our hands and smell them. It's a Cascade, it's a lovely citrus, sweet, fruity aroma. The second beer I'd like to talk about is a slightly darker beer. It's sort of what I would call a pale chestnut colour. And to get that colour, we use some different malts. Again, we're using Marasota as the main malt, but we're adding to that a lovely, sweet, nutty malt called crystal malt. This produces nuttiness and a slightly burnt character in the final beer. In addition, we're putting some black malt. This is malt that's been roasted for much longer and is very, very dark. This gives us a slight smokiness, a slight burnt character, but also gives us a lovely colour. So again, we select the malts to produce the right colour and flavour of the beer, and then we add hops again at different stages to create the balance of malt and hop character. For the chestnut beer, I've chosen East Kent Goldings again because they're one of my favourites, but I've added to that another hop called Bramling Cross. Bramling Cross is used a lot in the UK for beers, and I think it adds a beautifully balanced hop character to the beer. So they'll go in early, and then as with the pale, we're doing 2 later additions. In this instance, we're using 3 hops. Hop called Galena, which is often used predominantly for bittering, but I think gives a lovely clean, crisp hop aroma. We're using Bramling Cross again, and we're using Cascade again. This beer has slightly higher levels of late hop addition, and will have probably a much more marked late hop character to go with the more complex malt character. The third beer I'd like to talk about is another totally different product. It's a lager. We're producing, in fact we're brewing today, a beer that we're going to call Rock Premium Pilsner. Lagers, unlike ales, are fermented a much longer period and much colder. And the malts that we use tend to be much paler. So for the lager, we're using a traditionally produced lager malt. Added to that, we're adding a malt called Munich malt. Munich malt is a malt that's actually, in the maltings, roasted at a higher temperature to give it a little bit more maltiness. those of you who've tried lagers and ales, you'll know that lagers tend to be cleaner, much more delicate flavours. And that is predominantly due to the malts that we use, the slow, cold fermentation, but also the different hops. In the lager, we're using 3 hops, but these are all traditional lager hops. We're using a hop called Brewer, a hop called Thyme, and a hop called Salz. And these are continental hops, which tend to give more delicate hop characteristics. The final beer I'd like to talk about is a beer that I haven't actually designed yet. That's the job for today. This is going to be a 4.5% robust, good English ale. It'll be our strongest ale, and we'll have both marked malty characters, but also our characteristic late hop. Thank you very much for your interest, and I hope you enjoy our beers.